Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. We're going to keep focusing today on Chapter 4, and today we're going to be talking about chords and series of chords that we use when we write music or play music that are the most important chords. Those are the tonic and the dominant 7 chords. We're going to be talking about these today using these chords in the left hand, mainly while the right hand is playing a melodic line. But let's talk about what I mean by playing a tonic and dominant 7 chord when we're playing music in a major key today. Well, let's go back and remember. Let's start with our scale. Let's just start with a C scale. What are those notes again? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now, in our C scale, or in any major scale, we can create chords or triads on top of every one of these notes in the scale. The notes being called scale degrees. Scale degree 1, scale degree 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. So let's make chords on each one of these notes. And from here, I'll be calling a chord a triad. Triad, if you think of triad as meaning 3, tri, we have triads that are built, a series of thirds. A third up from C is E, and a third up from E is a G. There's our C triad. And we know that we have said this in the past. That is our tonic, and we use a Roman numeral 1 to describe what the tonic chord is, the 1 chord. Okay, on the way on up the scale, we can make a triad on the next scale degree, on the next one. Every single scale degree, we can build a triad on top of those notes, right? That's A, C, and E. Okay, so let's fix this one. A, C, and E. Now, today we're going to be focusing on 2 of these triads, and they are the tonic chord and the dominant. So let's go up to our dominant and find where our dominant is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th scale degree we know is our dominant. That's what we have said in the past. So these are our 2 most important triads in the scale when we are writing music. From these 2, we will be branching out. Next week, we'll be talking about another one of these very important triads. But today, we're going to focus on the 1 and the 5. And actually, when we use the dominant triad, we often actually add one more tone to that. And that is another third up from this one. So we have a first, a third, a fifth, and we then have another interval from here. From G to F is an interval of a 7th. We've studied all of our intervals up to this point, and so now we're talking about an interval of a 7th. And so from this G, we're going to now call this a 5-7 because we have added not only the notes in the G or dominant triad, we've added another note, a 7th above the root, the G. So we have a 5-7. Now, if we come over here, let's see if you can see over here. Well, I'll just erase this and we will talk about these 2 chords. I'll write them. It's actually, when you add the 5-7, you can't really call it a triad because it adds the 7th. So let's put our dominant here again, and let's put the notes that we have in our 5-7. Here's our 1, and there's our 5-7. So if you were to put your left hand on the C triad in C 5-finger position, you would have your 5th finger on C, your 3rd finger on E, and your 1st finger on G. Now, if you were wanting to play chords in your left hand while the right hand's playing a melody, and you had to jump from a C chord up to a G chord, that gets to be a lot of movement in the hand, especially when we add other chords to this harmonic series of chords, which we will call a progression of chords. The chords progress from one to the next. So instead of having to move our hand all over the place, we try to find a way that allows us to keep our hand in a position the closest to the root. So let's see, if we were to take, I'm sorry, I'm trying to move this around so you can see. if we were to take the notes in this G7 chord and try to keep them the closest to the same fingering we have in the C chord, we could rearrange the order of these notes. Instead of jumping and putting our fifth finger on G, our third on B, and so forth, we will try to figure out a way to keep them close to the C triad that allows us to not have a lot of movement. Well, one thing we also first notice is, well, there are 4 notes in this one. How is that going to be? How are we going to do that to make it like the C? So we're going to think about removing one of the chord tones in this G7 chord. And we have to figure out which one makes the most sense to move. Well, we know we have to have the G because the G tells us which triad, which chord we're going to be using. We know we have to have this middle note, the B in this situation, because the B tells us the quality of this chord. Is it going to be a major chord or is it going to be a minor chord? And then the F at the top tells us that we have added the 7th. So we know we need that 7th because that tells us that it is a 7th chord. The only note left that may not have as much meaning is this 5th note right here, because it's not going to give us the strength. We have to have all of the other 3 tones in order to be able to make this triad. So, well, it will become a triad. So next we're going to just remove this D, and we're going to now say we have the G, B, and F. The first tone, the third, and the 7th. So then we're going to say, okay, well, these G's between a C triad and the G7, they share this common note. The fifth scale degree in a C chord becomes the first scale degree, the root of the next chord. So the 5th of the tonic becomes the root of the 5/7. So now let's see if we have this G here and we're going to try to keep that. And so how could we rearrange this B and F? These are our 2 tones left. How could we place them to be the closest to looking like this tonic, so they're closer in order? Well, let's see. The F is close to this E, so we could, theoretically, put this F right here. And let's mark that one out. The B is 1 tone down from the C. So we could move the C down a half step to the B. So we have left the common, so it's going to be like this when we put it together. The C, E, and the G. We keep the common tone G. We add the F, we move the E up to a F. We move the C down to a B. And there we have it. So we have 1, 3, 5, 3, 1 is if we were playing this in the left hand, which we're not. And then we keep our 1 on this G. We're going to move our 3 up to finger 2, and we're going to move our 5 down 1/2 step and still keep the finger 5. So now we have 5, 2, 1. So when we play this progression of that looks very confusing. Let's write it out one more time so it makes good sense to you and you can practice this. Okay, let's do it in the treble bass clef, since that's where we're going to be putting our left hand. Let's start with our 1, C, E, G. This is our 1 chord. We're going to create a 5/7, the G, B, D, F. We're going to leave out the 5th tone, the D, and we're going to be working with G, B, and F. So to do this on the piano, we're going to keep the G common tone between the C chord and the G chord, and we will keep our thumb on the G. We're going to now place the F right below the G, so we don't have a lot of hand motion, and then we're going to put the B from this, which is going to be right below the C. So when we have our fingers, this is a 1 on G, a 2 on F, and a 5 on B. We still have a G7 chord, but we rearranged all of the notes. So we go from a 1 to a 5-7. Here we have fingers 5-3-1 and then 5-2-1. I always think of these two as squishing the bug. It's if you were in a C 5-finger position, it would simply be the 2. That would be out of a C 5-finger position. 1, 2, the C moves down to the 5. So that's what it looks like when we play a 5-7 with our notes flipped around so that it makes the most sense. Now, if you were to see something above the music that says C right here, and then you see G/B, that is going to tell you that this means you're going to play a C chord with the C in the bottom. This right here tells you you're going to be playing a G major chord, but B is going to be